Hey everybody, it's Lindsay and I'm here today with a new Let's Make a Card video. So first I am starting out with a piece of Canson watercolor paper, and this measures 4 inches by 5¼ inches, and I'm taping it to a piece of hardboard here. Now I am being very careful when I put this this painter's tape down because I want this to frame out my piece of watercolor paper. So I'm doing some masking here basically, but I'm using painter's tape. So this is about 3/4 of an inch thick, and I am just lining it up with each of the 4 sides on the paper. So what this is essentially going to do is it's going to mask off a rectangle for me, and it's going to leave a white frame or border around my watercolor paper. And this is just going to allow me to create that frame without doing any more die cutting or layering up any more layers and making my card extra bulky. This allows me to keep it nice and flat but still give the illusion of a frame. So once I have that all framed out, I'm bringing in my Tim Holtz ruler and I'm just coming in 1/4 of an inch from the top and bottom pieces of tape, and I'm making a light pencil line. And I'm using the 2 Paper Diva stamp set called Friends and Flowers today, and I have mounted this flower pot onto an acrylic block. I've brought out some waterproof black dye ink, and these 2 lines that I made are going to allow me to stamp straight. I tried doing this without the pencil lines and everything just either went downhill or uphill or was kind of off center, so this just allows me to keep everything nice and straight. So I stamped the flower pot in the middle first, and then I'm going to stamp on both sides just to make sure it's nice and even. And then I'm bringing in, this stamp set has 3 different flowers, and I'm going to be using each one. So I started with that little daisy in the middle, then I'm using this next one on the right hand side, and then I'll stamp the last one on the left hand side. And again, I'm just keeping the top of these flowers in line with that pencil line on the top. Now I'm going to go ahead and mask off all of these images that I've stamped, and I'm bringing in the stem from the stamp set, and I'm just going to connect all of these flowers to the flower pot. Now I'm not going to be really careful about the leaves. I don't mind if they're a little higher or lower from each other, because that's just going to help proportion the whole image and not make it look like I was trying to make everything too perfect. So if things are a little off, this will help really correct that. So I'm going to be doing some watercoloring on this panel. That's why I use watercolor paper, but instead of a water brush, I'm going to use my Wink Stella glitter brush pen, and this is in clear. And the liquid in this kind of acts like water. It's not water, but it makes it easier to watercolor. So I'm using my distress inks, and I've just got my palette. It's just a piece of white cardstock that I've laminated, and I'm just squishing that distress ink pad right down on there, and then I'll use the glitter brush pen just to pick up a little bit of that ink. Now I'm just going to start in the place where I want it the darkest, where I want the color the most intense, and then that liquid I use to pull the color out, and it really does a good job. So I'll show you this first pot in real time, and then I'll go ahead and speed through this. But you can see I'm just starting off in the right hand corner where I want the darkest color, and then I am just pulling out the rest of that color and fading it off with the liquid in the pen. I'll finish off this little pot down at the bottom, the little tray that it is sitting in, and I am just going to go ahead and do darker on both sides and then bring it into the middle and fade that color into the middle. Now you can always come back in and add more color in the places that you want it the darkest, so you can let this dry and then come back in with more color. You'll see I do that on this next pot, but it really works just like a water brush or a regular paintbrush that you would use. You just already have the liquid in it, and this is just going to give you a nice shine to the entire project. So I'll go ahead and finish that off, and then I am moving on to the flowers. Now I just picked some random distress inks. I'm using picked raspberry on this first flower, seedless preserves right here, this nice dark purple, and I'm just adding some shading in as I go. I'm not being too careful with my shading or being really precise. I'm using mustard seed on this flower, and then I use some spice marmalade for both the centers of the two flowers, and then I used some mowed lawn on my leaves. So I wanted a nice background to my flowers, so I masked them off, and then I went ahead and started with some evergreen bow distress ink, and I'm using my mini ink blending tool just to put this down. Now whenever I put my mask down, I didn't use my tweezers. You really should, because this is what happens. They would not stick, so I struggled with them a little bit, but I just kept repositioning them and working around them. I didn't want to cut any more out, but use your tweezers when you put your masks down. Don't use your fingers. So once I had the color nice and rich, I put quite a bit on, and then I am taking that Wink of Stella brush pen again, and I'm going to just use this to spread out all that color, smooth it out, and give a shine to the entire rectangle that I'm creating here. And this just really brings it to life a little bit, adds a little bit more to a really clean and simple card. So I'll just continue to spread all that out, and you can really move the color around with this. So if you wanted to add some shading around your flowers, you definitely could. I just used it to smooth out the color. Now this is the fun part where you get to remove all that painter's tape and see the nice crisp rectangle that you're left with. And whenever you do this, just make sure you pull it straight back, straight off the paper, and also you go pretty slowly here. You also, whenever you first stick this down, if you kind of press the tape up against your shirt or your arm a few times, it releases some of that tack, so you're not going to have as hard a time removing it. Now once I was done with removing that tape, I popped that panel into my MISTI, and I'm using the Banners No. 3 stamp set, also from Two Paper Divas, and I have just mounted the Thanks a Bunch sentiment onto the MISTI, and I'm just going to stamp it down in the bottom right hand corner right under that rectangle on the white portion of the watercolor paper. And I use just some black dye ink for that stamping, nice and clean and simple on this card. So I added some fun foam onto the back of that watercolor panel, and then I put some double-sided adhesive on the other side as well. And a little trick I've been doing that works really well is using my bone folder to really make sure that that adhesive is stuck down. And then you can just peel the backing paper right off. It doesn't fight you at all then. I'll go ahead and place this panel onto an A2 white side folding card base. And then I'm just going to add a few, I believe I added 5 moonshine sequins. I just used the medium and the very smallest size on this card. And I'm using glossy accents to secure them down, and my Quick Sticks tool to help me out. My Quick Sticks tool is just sticky on one side and has a little piece that pops out of the bottom, and this just allows me to pick up those sequins, place them right down on the glue, and then I can use that piece that pops out to kind of position them on the card and move them around without having to use my fingers and they get in the way and spread out my glue and make a big mess. So this tool is actually very much worth the investment. And that will finish off the card for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope I have inspired you to pull out your supplies and make a card as well. As always, I will leave you guys with the close-up of this card. Also, a look at the shine that the Wink of Stella glitter brush pen gives this card. And finally, just a few pictures. For more information and the supply list, you can head to my blog, craftingwhilecaffeinated.wordpress.com. The link is in the description box below, as well as that I in the top right hand corner. That will get you there too. Thank you guys so much for watching today, and happy crafting!